Perhaps the biggest story in Beaver County in 2016 was the official arrival of Shell Chemicals. The project, which has been touted as a once-in-a-generation kind of project, is going to bring 6,000 temporary jobs and 600 permanent jobs once the plant's complete. But Shell is not out of the woods yet. The company still has to secure some air and water permits before the plant can be operational. Despite that, Shell is thinking that it's going to start construction at the end of 2017. Unfortunately, it wasn't all about job gains in Beaver County this year. ATI announced in October that it would be permanently closing its Midland facility, which took about 250 jobs with it. So it's a bit of an ebb and flow in Beaver County in 2016, but certainly things are looking up with the arrival of Shell to the community.
The 2016 presidential election will go down as probably the most contentious, divisive election in American history. In Beaver County, it was no great surprise. Once again, the Democratic candidate did not carry the county. Even though the Democrats have about a 20,000 voter registration edge in Beaver County, the county once again went Republican. It went to Donald Trump by almost 16,000 votes, which didn't surprise a lot of people that he won, but it was very surprising in the number of votes that he got in Beaver County. In the race for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, we had Republican incumbent Pat Toomey facing off against Democrat Katie McGinty. And once again in Beaver County, despite that huge Democratic voter registration edge, McGinty did not carry the county. She lost it by almost 10,000 votes. In the course of the election, the Times did editorial endorsements for various offices. But probably the toughest one that we discussed and came down to was the race for the presidency. As an editorial board, we all thought that Hillary Clinton was by far the best candidate if you just looked at resumes and experience. The tough part was that we knew that most of Beaver County would probably support Trump, and we would not be backing that as an endorsement. But we stood by that decision, and I think even if we had to do it today, we would still say that Hillary Clinton was the better candidate.
Well, what I'll remember most about the state races is the 10th legislative district race between Aaron Bernstein, a Republican, and Democratic incumbent Jared Gibbons, which became one of the most heated races, state house races that I've covered, and then got to the point where Jared and the state house Democrats ran an ad referencing one of my stories and alluding to something that Aaron had said and simply wasn't accurate, and sort of stretched the truth a lot. In conjunction with that, our editorial board decided to take the unprecedented step of pulling the the editorial board's endorsement of Jared and giving it to Aaron. And it's something I've never been involved in, and something that a lot of people said that they had never seen before, a newspaper taking that kind of step when they disagreed with how a candidate had used their stories.
Covering Beaver County government was an interesting beat to have this year, as there were two new county commissioners, Sandy Egley and Daniel Camp, and as soon as they took office, they were baptized by fire, and they had to deal with constant financial issues all year, and it was really just a struggle making very difficult decisions, especially being new to the office, and they continually had to make unpopular decisions, and they struggled to get along with other county officials, including the new sheriff, Tony Guy. Their struggles to find common ground and to get along were dominated the year, as each month brought different more meetings and hours of discussions about the effects of decisions that they were forced to make, really. And cutting one small budget line item meant so much to so many people. Beaver County's trying to do more with less now, and that's going to continue in 2017. Even though the taxes were increased for the first time in 8 years and people are going to have to pay more, they're paying more for less services. And they're trying to do the same services, but at the same point they're doing it with fewer staff and fewer resources.
When Beaver Falls won the state 3A football championship on December 10th, it capped off a remarkable sports year for Tiger athletics. The 30-13 win over Middleton at Hershey marked the first time in Beaver Falls history that the Tigers won a state championship in football. In the process, the 13-1 Tigers set a school record for most wins in a season. It was also the first time that a team from the Times circulation area won a state football title since Aliquippa in 2003. The boys basketball team won the WPIAL AAA title in February. And in May, Tiger track star Don Peretta won WPIAL and state championships in the 800 and 1600 meter runs for 3 straight years, setting records along the way. And finally, let's not forget that the Aliquippa boys basketball team won WPIAL and state 2A championships with a perfect 30-0 record.
One of the stories from 2016 that will certainly stick with us here at the Times and all of the Beaver County community is the life and death of Aliquippa teen DiMantae Bronaugh. You know, we got a chance to know DiMantae as a football player and as a wrestler, but throughout the trials and tribulations that he had as he dealt with leukemia in a very public fashion, we got a chance to know about him as a person and what he meant not only to Aliquippa, but what he did for the Beaver County community and how he brought people together as he fought this disease. Unfortunately ended with his death, but I think it showed a lot about Beaver County and really the greater Pittsburgh area in general to see how people responded to try and help him and his family.
I was lucky enough to go down to Heinz Field for the WPIAL Championships, and as I was entering, about a half hour before the Aliquippa Beaver Falls game, I saw a few people entering the media entrance, and they were pushing somebody in a wheelchair in front of them, and I said, man, that's DiMantae Bronaugh right there. So I just happened to follow them in. Basically, we went through the security checkpoints together, and he basically went on right towards the tunnel where the Aliquippa players were congregating. It was a really emotional moment. It was touching. So I snapped a real quick photo. I didn't want to get in the way. There were a lot of people crowding around, but I put it on Twitter pretty much immediately, and it got a huge response. I mean, it was one of our most popular tweets of that entire game. That was a great moment just to see the community respond to having DiMantae down there with his players, getting to watch the clips. It was touching to see after he died, the reaction, the video that we made, and we posted on Facebook and Twitter. People were sharing it. It was one of our most popular videos we've ever produced for social media.
In looking at 2016 in review, we can't ignore the impact that the heroin epidemic has had on Beaver County and on Western Pennsylvania. At the beginning of the year, I set out to do a 3-part series on how federal, state, and local officials were tackling the issues of the heroin epidemic and things that go with it. At that time, newly elected District Attorney David Lozier said that while he was on the campaign trail, people brought it up to him consistently. By November, there were 68 confirmed heroin overdose deaths in this year alone. So I think it's something that officials will be looking at into 2017.
I've written a lot of stories this year, but one in particular resonated with me. It was a feel-good story about some very inspirational students. There were at least 4 school districts within Beaver County that have formed intramural bocce leagues where students are with and without special needs are playing together. Those schools were Rochester, New Brighton, Big Beaver Falls, and Central Valley. And it really was a beautiful thing to watch because they were encouraging and supporting one another. And really, the principle of inclusion is very simple. The path to understanding and friendship is through inclusion. And I, for one, think that that's a really special model that we should all adopt.